And you know that music means it is time for my LoSo Lifestyle with Mary Shep. Mary, why don't you give us a little bit of a recap about what we discussed last week and then move us into today's show.
So last week we were doing soup, stews, and stocks. And we had quite a bit of good information on that, and I got a lot of feedback from that show. So if you want to see that one, you can see it on 216 The Net or my LoSo Lifestyle Facebook page or YouTube page. So you can follow it on all of them. You can see all the shows, previous or current or otherwise. So whether you get a chance to watch us live on Thursdays or you want to watch all the old shows, there's plenty of places to find them. So a couple of the takeaways that I found that a lot of people didn't know were the celery leaves. I was really shocked at how many people sent me messages about celery leaves and how they never knew or thought to use them. But I guess once I thought about it, I was like, that's kind of true, because I didn't think to use them or do anything with them until I started, actually got it from a friend of mine who grows it for the farmer's market. And she gave me a huge thing of celery with all of the leaves intact, like a big giant tree. And that's when I discovered to use them. So it was kind of one of those things. I wish they were in the grocery stores, but that was in last week's show.
Yeah, and to me, that's the part of the celery you throw away.
Mm-hmm.
You don't eat the leaves. So I was surprised about that too, because that's something I never ever would have thought of.
Right.
Ever.
And if you're a celery lover, it's like the best of all of the worlds, because it doesn't have the stupid dental floss that celery comes with, and it's great on a salad. So it adds that celery flavor and crunch and freshness without having those big chunks of celery that you got to go and clean out of your teeth. You know, that you need dental floss for your celery dental floss.
See, if I'm eating celery, like actual just celery, it's either going to be doused and drenched in ranch or French onion dip or peanut butter. Otherwise, it isn't intentionally going in my mouth.
Which doesn't surprise me, because celery is not orange and you won't eat anything but orange vegetables.
Yeah. So, if it's not orange and it's not yellow, it's not a vegetable.
Right?
But if it is yellow, it's automatically a vegetable.
That's funny.
That's the way it works.
Still cracks me up. That still absolutely cracks me up. I'm trying to think of the other one was sun-dried tomatoes, which I only recently in my low sodium cooking had discovered, because with the sun-dried tomatoes, they're super tasty, but they can be a bit tough. So I never liked them on salads or sandwiches or anything of that nature, just because of the fact that when they sun dry them and they're these itty bitty little things, that center part of the tomato is almost crunchy, and it was just a textural thing. But now that I've started cooking with it, when you cook it in something like a soup or a stew or anything like that breaks down a little bit, it's actually in the goulash that I brought today. They're soft again, but they bring a huge punch of flavor. It's the acidity from the tomatoes, which acid, as we've talked on previous shows, helps with not having salt. So the acid from those tomatoes in that concentrated form brings a huge amount of flavor to any dish you're making.
Okay. All right. So, and by the way, from one of your prior episodes, Stephanie Connolly just chimed in here on Facebook Live and said, I cooked those stuffed mushrooms, like you said, with no salt, and Rich didn't notice. So it works.
Nice.
There you go.
Hey, Dad.
Yeah.
Dad's always present.
Hey, cool.
Yeah, we were talking. I had breakfast with Stephanie yesterday, and we were talking about, she was asking about the stuffed mushrooms and how I made them. And it's funny, because back to that, when I was saying how Ann Burrell said that you can't be a good cook if you don't use salt. And I beg to differ, because so many chefs that I've met, if it's not like a mashed potato or noodle where you cook it in salted water, and yes, there's, you salt throughout the process of cooking in a lot of recipes, but a lot of them, they salt at the very end. Even like with sauteed mushrooms or onions, if you add salt while you're sauteing it, all it does is leach all the water out, because that's what salt does. And it changes the dish. So if you saute your mushrooms and onions and stuff like that, and then at the very end of it, before you serve it, you salt it, it enhances the flavor and adds flavor versus is causing problems. So you can control things a lot more when you add a little tiny bit at the very end. And especially, when it comes to reducing sodium, there's huge range in the spectrum. There's people that, they're at the bare minimum of what you need to survive, 500 to 750 milligrams a day. Anything more than that, they're pretty much living on vegetables and raw proteins. Outside of that, they've got huge problems. But there's a lot of us who just, like myself, that need to stay at a normal range, 1,500 to 2,000 milligrams a day, which, I mean, even a normal healthy person, dietary regulations say about 2,000 to 2,500, depending on who you talk to.
Well, and then you have somebody like me who, I mean, that's blown at breakfast.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, I salt.
Yeah.
But
I used to salt my ketchup. Ketchup is highly salted to begin with, normal ketchup. And then I would salt my ketchup and dip my salted fries in my salted ketchup. So it was like salt on top of salt on top of salt on top of salt.
Yeah.
I
do that.
But once you change your palate a little bit, and you can cook fantastically, and you can just avoid, or if you're just trying to avoid it to be healthy and you don't actually have any kind of restricted need, you save it for the end, and you add a little tiny sprinkle at the end, and you're doing just fine. So
cool.
But yeah, today we wanted to talk about holidays, because obviously today's a holiday. I'm a
happy Halloween.
We just agreed that I'm a Dalmatian, self-identifying as a cow. So, okay. But I do have to give homage to my cow suit, because my niece is who got me this, Piper. When she was just learning to speak and couldn't say my name, she gave me the nickname of Moo Moo. And I've forever been Moo Moo to her friends and family, and my family have adopted that name. She's now a teenager, starting to drive, which is terrifying, but I'm not her mom, so I just get to watch and laugh. That's what aunts do. But when she was about 5 years old, she bought me this cow onesie, and a decade later I still have it, and I still wear it. Later on today I'll be wearing it at my store. And of course, since they don't sponsor my show, I'm not going to say that. But those of you that know me, I have a picture in my store actually of me with my uniform on top of it. So I'm like representing as a cow. It's pretty funny. So yeah, it's good stuff. But obviously we're in holidays. Thanksgiving's fast approaching. Christmas is fast approaching.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is Halloween. So everything else is now, it's the holiday marathon, everything. All the way through the end of the year and the new year.
Right.
So what do we start with? What do you start with? What's the number one thing on the list here?
Turkey and ham, because Thanksgiving, Christmas, turkey, ham. I know a lot with us, Christmas, it was always tenderloin or a big, huge, why can I not think of that name? It's a big, huge hunk of beef.
Oh, the brisket thing?
Well, there's brisket. Oh my gosh. The village squire has the juicy kind.
The
prime rib.
Oh, gotcha.
That's
okay.
it.
Big prime.
That's
okay.
the name that was eluding me. Prime rib. We always did Christmas prime rib. My father-in-law makes a fantastic prime rib. But turkey and ham are brined. So automatically right off the bat, you go from something, because pork, turkey, beef, any of it is naturally low in sodium. Any protein, fresh animal protein, is typically anywhere from 60 to maybe 95 milligrams of sodium per 4-ounce serving, depending on what cut of the animal it comes from. So if you look at when you buy a whole bird or something of that nature, they tend to put it right at the 85 mark, because they assume like if you just mashed everything up together and took the sodium content, that's what you get. But as it's brined, it goes up closer to the 300 to 450 range per serving.
Okay. All right.
But ham, because the process of making ham is to salt it, and it's like almost a controlled fermentation of sorts. So ham, unless it's made specifically to be low sodium, which you're lucky if you get a low sodium ham to be about 350 milligrams per 4-ounce serving. Those are closer to, on average, 1,000 milligrams per serving. So you've blown half your day on 4 ounces.
That's nuts.
Of ham.
That's insane.
Right. And I'm not going to lie. I had ham and cheese omelet yesterday at breakfast, and I'm paying for it. I am wholeheartedly paying for it. But every once in a while, there's something to be said for a couple slices of ham. So if you're going to choose to have a slice of ham, you better damn well be certain that it's going to be a salt block, and it's going to hit you hard. Because if you're low sodium and you haven't eaten that stuff and you think, oh, it's one day, it tends to hit you a little bit harder than it does normally, if that's the case. But turkey, so many people don't realize that it's brined, so they brine it again. Because what
So
happens?
you're double salting,
right?
on
Because you
top
buy a
of-
bird that's brined, you don't realize it's brined. It's in a 10% salt solution, so it's already 350 milligrams of sodium. And you go home and you find a recipe that says, Alton Brown says, brine your bird, soak it for a day in an awesome salt and garlic and seasons and oranges and all this stuff, which is true and it is fantastic. And I used to do it all the time. Alton Brown actually has some fabulous brine recipes. But that being said, if you're not paying attention, you buy a brined bird and then you bring it home and you do it again, it's even for someone who eats salt, that's a lot of salt. So you have to pay attention. And most people who find and seek out an unsalted bird, they're doing it because they at least have some knowledge of cooking and they intend to brine it. So they know that they're going to salt it themselves, which means it's still going to be 300, 400 milligrams a serving. So you're still way up there with turkey. So unless you're making it yourself, I usually tell people either avoid the turkey, avoid the ham, stick to the prime rib if someone made it, because even if they salt the outside of it, it's going to be your best bet. Or bring your own. But yeah, turkey, unfortunately, even though it's Thanksgiving, I hate to break it to you, that's one of the worst parts of the meal.
That's crazy. Because I know a lot of people do just the turkey, or they do both.
Mm-hmm.
That's usually because we
Big
usually
families do. They do
yeah,
the turkey and the spiral ham and the whole
thing,
the whole spiel. Yeah. But both turkey and ham, they get up there, and it's really hard because so many people. It's like the adage of, well, I didn't add salt to it. Well, you didn't have to because it was already in there.
No, I suppose not. No, but then does that take into account like the stuffing?
Mm-mm.
And
Mm-mm. So if somebody stuffs a bird, if I'm at a house where someone actually puts dressing inside the bird, I'm only going to eat it if I know they know how to cook. Because
do you not like the stuffing in the bird? I like the stuffing in the bird.
So I love stuffing. I could eat that as a meal on its own with some cheese on top or on a sandwich, or like I just love bread. So I could eat a sausage stuffing literally all day long. That's just good stuff. But when you put it inside a bird, if you think about how big a turkey is and how long it takes to cook, by the time you get the internal part of that stuffing inside the bird up to a temperature that is safe and not going to poison everybody, the outside of your bird is dry and disgusting. So either A, you're lucky and you don't get sick, which happens often because it's close enough, but the outside of the bird is cooked to a normal temperature, and then the inside is like questionable at best. But I've gotten sick or even borderline sick, and everybody always attributes it to I ate too much, and that's why I don't feel good the next day, or that's why I'm going to the bathroom so much, or it's probably because you're eating stuffing that was lukewarm inside a bird for 5 hours in the oven.
Okay. Okay. All right. So, but
So I cook it separate.
Separate, or can you put it in later?
You can, and a lot of people do. It's a lot of common practice now, just because people discovered that that's an easy way to get sick is by stuffing a bird and literally having lukewarm dressing sit in a bird for that long period of time. So they'll make the dressing, and for presentation purposes, stuff it. I like a pretty bird and all, that's fantastic, but outside of taking a picture of it when it first comes out of the oven to see the nice golden brown crispy skin,
well, because you got to post it.
I hack it up. Oh yeah, of course.
Everybody posts.
We're a social media society.
We know you know exactly. Like today, there will probably be 1 million posts of all kinds of candy, because we all know it's Halloween. Everybody's going to go trick or treating, all the kids, and then they're going to come home. They're going to take 10 million pictures of it, of their haul, because we all know. Okay, it's Halloween. You got some friggin' candy. We get that. But then everybody does the same
thing. It's like
thing.
the first day of school.
We all know what you're having on Thanksgiving. You're either having turkey and or ham and or, like you said, the brisket or the prime rib. We used to do, like, my mom, you already know, she could not cook. And she knows she could. She still can't. She doesn't even cook for herself.
Yeah,
because she's so bad. But We did have a Thanksgiving. I can't remember if it was a Thanksgiving or Christmas where she did do a brisket in the oven, and it was actually really good. I remember that from my childhood because it was one thing she cooked that we all could eat and we liked. And
I love
it
brisket.
never
I
happened
love
again.
corn. We talked about that before, though. I love corned beef.
Oh yeah, you do.
That is my birthday meal. I still do a brisket of some sorts for my birthday. It's just not. I mean, there's certain things you can make. You can do low sodium. There's certain things that you can do really good. We talked about when I talked about corned beef on that episode that one of my friends, Mitch, who is like he's a charcuterie expert. That man can make anything with meat, and he makes a fantastic. He actually made corned beef and took days that it takes to make it and vacuum sealed it in his vacuum sealer and shipped it to me.
Wow.
It was fabulous.
That's cool.
Yeah. So it was really good.
So now I know you've talked a lot before about the potatoes, but like of course that's like a standard staple now at the holidays, mashed potatoes, the yams that are coming up. And
I've switched to acorn squash.
Acorn squash in lieu of what?
In lieu of yams.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Acorn squash?
The carb and sugar balance is a little bit better in acorn squash than it is in yams. And so it's just, and it tastes relatively similar. So I do a chipotle spice with butter and about a tablespoon of brown sugar and throw it in the oven. And that's it.
Man.
Yeah. I got a reverend over here telling me to add some
bless it with some salt. Yeah. So,
yeah. Keeping the salty demons away. Yeah. But no, I switched to acorn squash, but potatoes.
So how do you make that though? I mean, I know how you
cut it in half, throw it in the oven. That's it.
That's it.
Yeah,
you can
literally.
just eat it.
My husband and I actually, it's almost like a bowl of ice cream or something. You cut it in half. I throw an actual chunk, like half-inch chunk of butter right in the middle. You dip the seeds out because it's got seeds inside it like a pumpkin.
Okay.
So it's got that little hole in the center like a bowl, and you just put a pat of butter, and I sprinkle it with brown sugar. So like the whole cut surface is covered in brown sugar. Put some chipotle spice in there from Mrs. Dash, which is no salt. And you literally just throw it in the oven at 350 for 45 minutes or an hour, depending on how big the actual squash is. And you can eat the skin if you want. It's bitter, but it is actually really good for you, and you can eat it, but it's an acquired taste. But you just take a fork and eat it straight out of its squashy little bowl. We put it in another bowl, so because if you poke through the skin, you're going to have screaming hot brown sugar liquid all over you.
But yeah.
But you just tap into it like a. When I could have more salt, and occasionally if I feel like spoiling my husband, you can put what you would be in heaven about is big old chunks of bacon or pork fat or pork belly on there, and then it's a meal in itself.
Ooh, I'm gonna try and remember that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that might be something I want to try.
Yeah,
that sounds really good.
It kind of brings us into your hidden salt blocks in holiday meals, and that's potatoes. People don't think that that's going to be your biggest salted thing, and it is itself. No, if you just had a baked potato, you're fine. Baked potatoes at a restaurant, a lot of times they actually season the outside of it and coat it in olive oil and salt, which is fantastically tasty, but at the same time it's also salted. But the potato itself is extremely low in sodium, so you can eat as much as you want, and I do because I'm a potato slut. And I really am. I mashed browns.
Mashed brown.
Mashed
You're so excited you can't even say it right anymore.
Hash browns, shredded potatoes, tater tots, anything. But of course, I
freaking love tots. Oh my gosh, I love tots.
They are loaded with sodium, and they are coveted in our LoSo world. And when you find low sodium ones, we share it like you wouldn't believe. Because it's a huge pain in the ass to make homemade tater tots, but they are really tasty. But mashed potatoes, on average, either A, somebody cheats and they make it with a box, and boxed mashed potatoes are loaded in sodium, or they, as Anne Burrell would say, make it taste like seawater and put 16,000 pounds of salt in the water and cook your potatoes in salted water, which I also used to do. But there's no need to.
Well, I always, anytime you boil something, I always throw salt in. I just thought that's something you're supposed to do.
And it's not that you're not supposed to do it. It's that it adds a ton of salt to your dish because the reaction and blah, 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 sciencey stuff, it osmosis or absorbs more than you think it does.
Huh.
So it's not necessary. You can salt your stuff afterwards. But it's the same reason last week when we had someone ask, what do you do if it's oversalted? And how do you pull the salt out? If you throw a potato in a soup or a stew that you've oversalted, that potato will suck that salt out of it and absorb it, which is why when you cook potatoes or mashed potatoes, they tell you to put so much salt in it in the boiling water because it flavors the potatoes because it's such a bland thing. But that means anywhere you go, if someone makes mashed potatoes, you can guarantee that that's going to be a high salt dish. And then they salt it afterwards. And then they add cream cheese or garlic or butter or all the things that make mashed potatoes delicious.
So, well, and Sedlak Handrock says, I liked stuffed acorn squash.
Yes.
I don't know. I don't know what acorn squash is either.
That's what I was talking about. Acorn squash. You see them in the grocery store. It's about the size of one of those giant 16-inch softballs, and it's green or greenish orange depending on how ripe it is.
So what's the difference? What you were talking about the acorn squash a minute ago.
That's what it is.
That's what it is. Okay.
Yeah, it's next to the butternut squash. It's a winter squash.
Okay, I know what butternut squash is.
Yeah,
I've had butternut squash soup.
And it's butternut's a little bit more mild. Acorn is more like sweet potatoes. It's got a much sweeter taste with the texture of squash. So I'm a huge fan. I make them all the time. So that recipe is also on. I don't know actually if it's on there, but it is explained on there. And there's a lot of pictures of it because I make it often. But
so if you've got all that in potatoes, then of course, like mashed potatoes, really Thanksgiving is not Thanksgiving for me unless I'm putting gravy on top of the stuffing, the turkey, the potatoes, pretty much everything gets gravied. And
gravy is another hidden salt block. It's because the nature of gravy itself, you tend to make it with a stock. So the base seasonings, and if you use like a giblet gravy with all the guts of the inside of the bird and things like that and the drippings from the bottom of the pan, of course, that's all the salted components that dripped out of a salted bird into a salted pan that was seasoned and so on and so forth. And then you add a salted stock to it. So whether you make your gravy or you buy a can of gravy, the jarred gravies, they're heavily salted, but you can do it without it. So if you're cooking an unbrined bird and seasoning accordingly, I have actually posted my whole Thanksgiving menu is posted on my page at my LoSo Lifestyle. It's got the turkey, it's got the gravy, the stuffing, the acorn squash. It's even got a spicy corn salad that I love. The garlic dinner rolls, the whole 9 yards. It's all on there. I posted that this morning. But you can make a gravy and you can make it without it. You just have to be mindful that you have to do it with a low sodium or unsalted stock. And then of course your bird. But if you're eating at someone else's house, then you can guarantee that the mashed potatoes and gravy are going to be high salt, unless for some lucky reason they can, cook low sodium.
But I'm trying to find your page here so we can pop this up on the Facebook Live feed.
And you know what? Sometimes it won't let me tag on the actual live thing. I have to wait until after the show to do it.
I'll give it one more shot.
Try putting a space between mine and LoSo. So a few of the other ones, obviously breads. Breads are high in sodium just because people tend to add salt for flavoring. And of course, we talked about that before, where it retards the yeast and it slows it down. So it does kind of serve a purpose. But dressings, chip dips, all the appetizer dips, and then of course cheese. So a lot of people have a cheese platter or something else like that out, and cheeses are just naturally high in sodium, and people don't think to look for low sodium versions when they're putting it out for a platter.
Tons of cheese, dressings, dips. Like I said, veggie trays are always out, but there's tons of dip.
Right, the veggie dips, the onion dips, the ranch dips. Yeah, all of those things. Yeah,
all of those, and then breads and
Like the tubed croissants that are huge at everybody's Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Those are heavily salted.
Those disappear in a heartbeat.
They do, because they're tasty, because they're salty little butter bombs, which, I mean, that's like bacon. Who doesn't like that? Even me not eating salt, I still seek out my low sodium bacon or make it myself. And you
make bacon yourself, low sodium bacon. How do you do that?
Bacon is just salted pork belly.
Okay.
So if you can cook pork belly without salt, and it's essentially bacon. It's just the thin layer of meat and then the fat that's on the pork belly. And that's where the goodness comes from. So you can make it yourself. It's not easy. It's like corned beef. You can make it.
You
can also, make your own bread. And there's people who do it on a regular basis. A friend of mine, I'm actually going to go and we're going to have a bread party because she grinds her own grains. She's probably going to be a guest on my show.
Cool.
She's a bread nut. And so we're going to make some breads together and create some low sodium recipes, but it's also not an easy thing. The world is full of conveniences. So if you can go to the store and buy a loaf of bread,
is what you're going to do.
I mean, people just don't want to take the time, but you can. So you can make just about anything, including bacon, low sodium.
And Stephanie Connolly says, I make sweet potatoes with cinnamon and marshmallows. Sweet potatoes, I mean, I love the marshmallows, the brown sugar, the cinnamon, the nutmeg.
So now sweet potatoes
love sweet potatoes like that.
A lot of times with sweet potato dishes, they can be relatively low in sodium. It just depends on whether someone actually cut up yams and baked them with marshmallows and cinnamon, because then you're good. Chances that someone there might add salt to it, but chances are slim. But if you get canned sweet potatoes, those can have salt in them, but you're gonna, even at canned sweet potatoes, you're gonna have a lot less sodium than you would mashed potatoes. So if you're gonna go for one of the mash, go for the sweet potato mash over the regular mashed potatoes.
But you do mashed potatoes like a lot though, right?
I do. I actually cook mine with garlic in the water. So I throw garlic cloves, smashed garlic cloves in the water.
Okay.
Also, if you know how to can, you can can potatoes. And instead of canning them in salt water, if you do an acid, so a little bit of an acid, because you always have canning acid. Otherwise, you got to do pressure cooking at a very, very high temperature. But you can can potatoes with different seasonings. So if you can it with the herbs or garlic or something of that nature, it infuses it into the potato and makes them fantastic. But you have to learn how to can. So that's a whole other episode. And pressure canners are fun things.
Okay, so at some point coming up, we'll have low sodium canning.
Yeah.
On an episode.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Oh, and now you know what? We're actually getting right up on the bottom of the hour here. So I want to take a moment just to remind everybody that you are listening to My LoSo Lifestyle with Mary Shep here on 216thenet, 216thenet.com. You can go to the website, click listen live. You can catch us, of course, on the Facebook live stream, which a ton of people have been doing so far this morning here. And, of course, on the YouTube channel, the new 216thenet YouTube channel, which is live streaming the show right now as well. And all of this is made possible by folks like, really cool folks like Natural Therapy Wellness Center at 815-385-8190, McHenryMassage.com. A massage can be a great way to pamper yourself when you've had too much salt and you're all bloated and you can't move. It can be a great way to alleviate or maybe even take down that stress that you deal with from on a day-to-day basis. You can contact them today to speak to one of their certified massage therapists. Natural Therapy Wellness Center, 815-385-8190, McHenryMassage.com. And, of course, McHenry Villa, a senior living community right here in McHenry, Illinois, 815-344-0246. You can find them online at McHenryVilla.com. McHenry Villa is committed to the core values of hospitality, stewardship, integrity, respect, and humor. At McHenry Villa, their goal is to make you feel comfortable at home. Because if you don't feel comfortable at home, where the heck are you going to feel comfortable, right? McHenry Villa, a senior living community center, a senior living community, not just a center, the whole community. So 815-344-0246. and that is mchenryvilla.com. So now I know that you do have on your list here talking about educating friends and family.
Mhm.
So while while I'm telling you to tell us about that, and I catch you just as you're trying to refresh a little bit there,
So I think
what's
I've said
involved
this
there?
before. Don't be a dick. Everybody just assumes that, oh, everybody knows I'm low sodium. Everybody knows I have a heart condition or a liver condition, or, my family knows this, my friends know this, so they're going to know what to do. Or I'm a vegetarian and everybody knows I'm a vegetarian, so there's going to be stuff there that I can eat. You can't expect people to accommodate your needs, especially if they're making a meal, like a Thanksgiving meal where they're cooking for 5, 10, 15, 20, however many people. Some of these families, like I've made some huge Thanksgiving dinners that have 2-3 tables worth of people. I mean, my father-in-law's got 9 brothers and sisters.
Whoa.
So, it's not often that our whole tribe gets together, but even when you're cooking for 5 or 6 people, it can be daunting. And when you expect people to accommodate your needs and they're not educated, even something like vegetarian, where you'd assume that, someone knows not to use meat. Well, like the cream of broccoli soup that I made last week for last week's episode, and I made it for a vegetarian friend, and she says, I didn't have any because I assumed you use chicken stock. He said, no, I was making vegetarian soup, so I used vegetarian stock or veggie stock instead. But it's so easy in your cooking routine to forget and sprinkle something with salt or, cross-contaminate something. They were talking about that with the new Impossible Burgers or whatever, where the Burger King or McDonald's or whatever got in trouble for feeding them down the same conveyor belt that they do the meat products. And you can get people sick.
Well, okay.
Because
right. It's friggin' Burger King. What do you expect? You're not going there.
Exactly.
Anyway, come on.
Well, that's a whole other argument of why vegetarians are trying to make meat products if they want to be vegetarian. But
yeah,
we can argue about that on it. We'll start a vegetarian show. But it's the same with salt. There's so many people. The common phrase is, well, I didn't add any salt. So they're assuming that they're doing right by you because they didn't add any salt. When, like the goulash that I made for today, if you add canned goods, which I did, a can of Rotel and a can of stewed tomatoes and a can of this and a can of that, and they're all 300 milligrams a piece per serving, and there's 3 or 4 servings in each one, and then you salt the noodles. So even if you didn't add any extra salt on top of it, then like the turkey at Thanksgiving, I didn't salt it, so you're good. Well, is it an unbrined bird? I don't know. Do you have the package? Nope. It's in the dumpster. It's out at the curb. So you have no way to even check. So you can't just assume. And if it's a last minute thing, then you're just going to have to figure it out and not be pissed at the person that invited you because they didn't accommodate you accordingly.
Well, yeah, it's not their responsibility. No. I've been on different restrictive diets off and on for years, and it's actually really, you don't really even want to go when you're going to have to say, oh, well, I can't eat that, because you don't want to be that pain. You don't want to be that person who's like, I know you're making this cool stuff, I can't eat it. And then they, well, what do we have that you can have? Or you don't want to be that pain to the people that you're going to. And so you just like, I just don't want to go. But, when you do let people know, like you said, you do let people know, then quite often, especially family, they're happy to make sure there's something that you can glom onto. And
worst case scenario, I know everybody's different, and like you're not necessarily a veggie tray kind of guy.
Not unless I got something to dip that stuff in. Yeah.
But that's where, if someone asks me, what can I make to accommodate you? It's taken me a long time, even as somebody who knows how to cook, and anybody that knows me or cooks low sodium, or anyone in the low sodium groups can tell you that it takes a while to get used to cooking without salt and adjust those flavor profiles, and to expect somebody to do that for you, especially when all of the rest of the guests are salted, you can't do that. That's just not fair. So I'll just resort to be like, if you're going to have a veggie tray, I'm good. I can snack on carrots and celery and whatever. And even if I overdo it on the dip, it's still way better than all the other crap that I would possibly eat. But also if you're just mindful of what's there, then you can pick your battles. So, if you skip the turkey, but you have the sweet potatoes, or, you know what I mean? Like or small portions, things of that nature. So but you just can't, you can't assume. And when you educate your family or friends, I have a fantastic group of friends. We meet once a month. We go out to dinner. We play bunco. And they always like the chips and salsa.
Mm-hmm.
She'll ask, like, which chips is it that you buy again? Or I'll bring some of my own. And, they all ask. And if I just ask them, like, what are you making? Because I can look up, and if they're making like a lot of people make those party meatballs with the grape jelly barbecue type sauce dipping stuff or whatever in a crock pot.
Oh yeah, like those little whatever. I don't know.
Little cocktail
like
meatballs,
Swedish meatballs or something like that. I don't know, but yeah, I know what you're talking about.
So if I just ask, what are you making? What's how are you making? What ingredients do you use? Where'd you buy it at? And I can do a little bit of research and say, okay, yeah, I can eat that. I can plan for it, the same as if we go out to a restaurant and you research a meal. You can look it up and say, okay, if they bought the meatballs at Sam's Club, I can look that up and see what the nutritional specs are on that.
Yeah.
And go, okay, I can have 3 or 4 of those and be okay, and then just eat vegetables.
Have you ever just taken your own food?
Always.
Do a thing?
Always. Especially the same with the educating people. If you're telling them and they're aware of how important it is, and that because that's the other thing people say, well, it's just one day. Yeah, well, that one day can be a huge problem for a lot of people. So yeah, you just ask. Do you mind if I bring a dish to pass? I'll bring a dip. I'll bring a whatever, because it does. I do, or even the little condiments.
Yeah,
you can buy little tiny Tupperware things. There's a million of them on the market, and you can bring it to a restaurant. I remember one of the first times I went out to eat and braved it after I had gotten diagnosed. And I did. I had a little packet of mayonnaise, and I had a little packet of ketchup, because you can't buy them in the little packet forms.
No, yeah.
Low sodium, but you could buy your own and put it. I had these little tiny squeeze bottles. They were the cutest little things. It was like a little miniature ketchup and mayonnaise bottle. And I did my research, and I knew what I could eat, because I like to dip my French fries in mayonnaise. But
that's actually really very good.
It is. And
not a lot of people know. They go, you do what?
Yeah, apparently it's a European thing. So, and I've never been to Europe, so I was like, whatever.
I also like fries in ranch.
See, ranch is a tough one, because it's hard to get that. And there's a seasoning company that's coming out with a ranch that I'm eager to try once it comes out, because all of their spices have been fantastic, and I'm super eager to use them. But that's one of those coveted things where if you find a good seasoning blend that tastes like ranch, low sodium,
Can you eat mustard?
Mustard's surprisingly low. So I do eat quite a bit of mustard. One
thing I do often that my wife, it grosses my wife out, but I mix mustard and mayo and make like my own little dip. And
so now
I do that
steak,
a lot.
I will mix a spicy brown or Dijon mustard with sour cream and use that for dipping steak or chicken or something like that. And because it's like a LoSo, I'm a dipper. I love dips.
Yeah, I do too.
I eat way too much of it. So if you do mustard with fresh garlic and sour cream, it's like a spicy, garlicky, mustardy little blob of heaven on stuff.
Yeah, it sounds good. Eleni Myers commented here, this lady is good. Does she own a restaurant?
No, never. No. Never in a million years. I've been asked that a ton of times, especially people who've tasted my unsalted food. So, Ann Burrell, you can suck it. They say I have good food. Of course, if she tasted it, because as much as she salts everything, she would probably say it needs salt, which she's probably right.
And just a quick recap for people who have maybe they're just catching the show for the first time. It's been on for a little over a month now.
Yeah, 6 weeks.
My LoSo Lifestyle with This is Mary Shep, and she's actually learned to live a low sodium lifestyle because it's medically necessary for her. That's why she knows all this stuff. That's why she's learned all this stuff, and she's sharing it with other people who either need to live that way or are simply interested in lowering their salt and sodium intake. So that's why she's so good. And by the way, Eleni, she's a friggin' amazing cook. She's made stuff for us here and brought it to the studio that is really, really good.
Thanks, Pete.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because I suppose I think I might have mentioned George a couple times, speaking of me being low sodium and why I'm low sodium. I do have liver disease, and it's not like a little bit. It was pretty bad for a while. But I fix things with food, and obviously it's not easy. I will never tell anybody that it's easy and you can do it, and it's just flip of a switch, change your lifestyle. It is not. It takes effort and it takes time. It's the same with anything. But I'm a dork and I name everything.
Mm-hmm.
And of course that did not stop with my liver disease. So I named my liver. His name is George. I don't know if everybody's seen the Saturday Night Live skit from, on Alien, the movie Aliens.
Yeah.
When the little creatures like explode out of your gut. And Saturday Night Live did a skit where the little alien busted out of the gut and he had a top hat and a cane and he's saying, "Hello, my baby."
Yeah.
So, of course, I'm sitting in a hospital. They can't figure out what's wrong with me. I've got 5 organs that are failing, and I'm retaining 7 liters of fluid. They tell me I'm going to go have a paracentesis. I have no clue what this is. But whatever. All right, I'm game. Let's do this. So they take me downstairs, and I literally looked like I was pregnant.
Wow.
Like my belly button was about to pop, almost a line in my belly, pregnant. And they literally tap you like a keg, like a topical ointment on your skin. They put a little itty bitty tiny 1/4-inch slit in the side of my belly. They poked a tube in my belly and put a jar on the floor.
I'm sorry.
And I'm not kidding.
It's not funny, but it's funny.
And I like lean over to like peek at this jar a little bit on the floor and look at the nurse. And as I rolled, of course, that shifts the liquid in your body. And you don't think of it as literally just a bunch of fluid in your gut, but that's exactly what it is. And I looked down, and of course, when I spin, she's like, "Oh yeah, that's good." And I was like, "What?" And then you see the liquid just start pouring out of me into these little jars. I was like, "You gotta be kidding me."
Wow.
But you could watch my stomach deflating like a waterbed.
Wow.
And I get upstairs, and of course now all of that pressure is relieved from my insides. So I can breathe. I'm starving because nothing is squishing my belly that I haven't eaten in days. So I was like, "Can I eat?" Of course you can. Yeah. If you're hungry, you can eat. Let's eat. So I inhaled. They made me an omelet that was huge. Portion control probably isn't the strong suit of hospitals.
Mm.
But it was just funny because when I got up there, and you're trying to cope with all of these things, and you've got so many people telling you so many things. And of course, right as I got up, and there's a doctor chewing in my ear about this, that, and the other, and my liver disease and what's happening. And so the nurse had said, "How are you doing?" And me being me, I'm not a crier. I'm not one of those people. So I didn't want to bawl my eyes out. And I said, "So, if you see George," she says, "George," she's confused as hell. She's thinking I've lost my ever-living mind. Is he's cute little guy. He's got a top hat. And she looks and she's like, "George." I said, "Yeah, I just had a baby. Didn't you know? They took me downstairs to the maternity ward, and I had a baby. It was real quick, super nice down there." So he ran off. Like he just, he's just funny like that. And he ran off. She just looks at me and realizes I'm joking and starts dying laughing. She says, "Well, if I see George, I'll bring him up here." I said, "Good, because he's probably starving like me." So that just became the thing. And I told my husband about it. And then, of course, it was a couple weeks after I was out of the hospital. We were at a friend's house, and I wasn't feeling too hot. And it was about due for my, one of my 18 million different medications I was on. And my husband could see that. And he looked at me. He's like, "Is it George?" Yeah, I think it's George. He went to his friends. He's like, we're going to cut it. We're going to go, we're going to head out, blah, blah, blah. And, does what husbands do. So we went home and it's been George ever since. So
Well, there you
it's
go.
just kind of funny that I have George, and that's my little sidetrack off the holiday eating is. So if you ever hear me talk about George, you know who George is.
That's all right. We got just a couple of items left on your list here. We got about 15 minutes left this morning, and you mentioned here you wrote down snack wisely, stick to veggies. Ugh.
Yeah,
Sorry,
you do. You got
not my thing.
So it's almost like a minefield. You just walk in and it can be so overwhelming, especially when there's so much food around and it smells so good. I kind of do a lay of the land thing where you survey what's out there and see what you're not going to be able to avoid. If there's a big platter of bacon, obviously that's going to be your go-to. You're going to park your butt right next to the bacon. So if you look and see what's all there, you can snack wisely and snack accordingly and see and avoid things that are going to be super high and pick things that are going to be a little bit lower. And that sticks to anything. That's not just low sodium. So regardless of what your diet is, if like you with carbs, you've learned to look at the buffet and go, okay, I got to skip that one and skip that one, but I can have a couple of these.
Yeah.
So you pay attention instead of saying, screw it, it's so overwhelming, I'm just going to do whatever and suffer the consequences. You really don't want to do that. Not unless you absolutely have to, because it sucks. It just sucks to feel crappy, and it's a downhill slope.
Well, I mean, ramifications for you in grabbing something that's more sodium than you should have are a lot different than me having some carbs. Right. I mean, I can shove a Twinkie in my mouth and I'm not going to have a bad day. I'm going to have a great time.
Right.
Because there's a Twinkie in my mouth.
Right.
And there's nothing better than a Twinkie in my mouth, unless it was a bacon wrapped Twinkie. I've never tried that, but you just made me think of it.
Now there is another thing that you can do. I saw someone discover this recently, and it was funny how excited they got. That when you make pancakes, and you make low sodium pancakes, and you get low sodium bacon.
Actually pretty good.
But if you make
my wife makes them.
Instead of a circular pancake, if you make a little pancake strip and then put a piece of bacon in it, and then the pancake cooks around the bacon, and you've got a little pancake bacon.
Oh,
they're really
there's
tasty.
an idea.
Yeah, they are so tasty. Or chocolate covered bacon. That's another one. Okay.
So okay.
Yeah. $340 for a
from the in studio audience.
Our narrator,
in studio audience. 300. How many?
Yep.
360 milligrams of sodium.
Now, what are the calories as well?
None. Yeah, no. Twinkies are calorie free.
So a lot of times it's funny because if you don't, if you can't read the nutrients on something, or someone posts the calories on it. So if you see something says 460 calories, chances are a lot of times, and this is not a law to go by, but a lot of times your calories and your sodium are pretty close. So unless it's specifically made to be a low sodium product, and if you look and if it's around 300 calories, it's going to be 300 milligrams of sodium. I found that a lot of the times is the case. I don't know why. It just happens to be. So unless you know it's something that's low sodium, you can kind of get an idea if someone posts the calorie count.
So often you found that the calorie count somewhat matches the sodium count.
Yeah.
So
the one thing that a lot of people don't, well, it's not, I don't necessarily say they don't think about it, but balance really is key. And a lot of holiday dishes are carb loaded. Sugars, carbs, whatever. So you tend to eat a lot of carbs, and you don't balance that out with your proteins and your fiber.
Yeah.
And you really do need to, because not only from a weight gain perspective and a health perspective, but a million people ask me all the time, how are you so skinny? How can you eat as much as you eat and be so skinny? And honest to God, balance is 100% the key. Your body's meant to eliminate everything. So if you eat too much fat, too much sugar, too much alcohol, too much salt, too much whatever, the reason you have a gallbladder and kidneys and a liver and all of these different organs is to filter all of that stuff out and eliminate it and get rid of it. So when you eat balanced on a regular basis, your body is no longer in a fight or flight situation. It's not in a, when am I going to get protein again? Or when am I going to get sugar again? When am I going to get carbs or fiber or iron or potassium or whatever it is? Because if it only gets iron once every 6 months, it's going to store it.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't think of your body of having that kind of control, but it really does. So when you eat balanced, and you need those proteins and those fibers, and they also make you feel a little bit more full. So even if you're a vegetarian, you can find proteins in vegetables. So you just need to balance it out a little bit, and you'll kind of avoid all of the minefields that come along with it. And it also helps you eliminate all of that stuff naturally. Now, of course, when you got a bum liver and it's kind of lopsided, you gotta find your own balance. That took me about 6 months, and it was not easy, but it can be done, which is why I eat the way that I do eat, and why I splurge where I do splurge, because I know how to purge my system of it. But like you said, when you splurge, you splurge.
Yeah.
When I splurge, all of those toxins build up in my blood and they float around in my brain.
Mm.
And it makes you foggy. It's like a stroke-like effect. It's real fun when you can't find your words. But if you balance everything, it makes things a whole lot easier, and it is a lot easier to control your weight.
No, I would imagine it would.
Right.
Imagine it would be.
Right.
Yeah.
So the other one is, like you had brought up a little while ago, is bring something. Don't be scared to ask if you can bring something. People a lot of times like when you share your food, or when you help out, or even something as simple as bringing unsalted or low salt tortilla chips.
Mm.
And then you can splurge on the dip because you saved yourself the 300 milligrams of sodium in the potato chips, which, by the way, is like 14 potato chips.
That's it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna eat chips. 1.
Yeah.
2.
Yeah.
No,
14.
No,
and that's always one of the first things I discovered with portion sizes was potato chips and salsa. 14 potato chips and 2 tablespoons of salsa. So I get enough salsa for 2 potato chips.
Oh man.
And then I got another 12 potato chips that nothing on them. Are you kidding? Who gets salsa and doesn't eat half the jar?
Yeah,
like it should say 2 servings on the jar of salsa.
Yeah.
One for me, one for you, and then half a bag of potato chips each.
Yeah, and then you're done. So I mean, I do the same thing with the cheese dip, or it's same.
Yeah.
Any kind of dip and a bag of chips.
And even if you bring your own dips, and you can have your own dip and chip, there's I know I have quite a few of my recipes on there. The French silk pie, I can't actually take credit for that recipe. That's a Betty Crocker recipe. And I will say the Betty Crocker cookbooks, the old school checkerboard Betty Crocker cookbooks are fantastic. They list the nutritional information, and surprisingly, I found a lot of her the recipes in there are low sodium.
Really?
So they're easy to alter, and it's just been my go-to. So there's a lot of other low sodium cookbooks out there by some really good authors. One of them who recently passed, I talk about his group, Hack and Salt, quite a bit here. He was believed either early this year or just last year, he lost his battle. But that French silk pie, it's super easy to make, and it's fabulous. So you can have some desserts, but unfortunately with baked goods, especially at the holidays, those are, we talked about that too, baking soda.
Yeah.
And by sodium carbonate, it's just loaded with crap. Man.
So now you also touched on this a little bit ago, and then we jokingly, but serving portion sizes. I mean,
it's Thanksgiving. Yeah, the whole handful thing. I see you crying about the handful thing.
Yeah, I'm sitting here looking at my hand. I'm like, that's not going to happen.
Right.
It just isn't going to happen.
Well, and it's funny because you don't think about it, but we're meant to be grazers. We're not meant to sit down and have 3 meals a day. Your stomach is only so big. You're meant to have, 4, 5, 6, maybe 8 ounces of food tops, which is why serving sizes are 4 ounces raw, 3 ounces cooked, is because of that. You're supposed to have a little 4-ounce piece of meat and a 4-ounce piece of vegetable, and then go on your way. I mean, you watch Andrew Zimmern go on an expedition into some tribe where They do. They eat all day long. They pick and snack and go through. It's the same with animals. They tend to pick and snack and go through, and they keep up that sustenance to match their energy level throughout the day versus gorging on one meal, which is why you're so exhausted after eating, because it takes a lot of energy to digest food.
Yeah.
So if you eat those smaller meals, so it's not always the easiest to do portion control for the holiday, but if you can, it'll help you out, or be one of those people that just grazes the whole time. I have a friend that does it. She doesn't actually sit down and eat a Thanksgiving meal. She grazes the whole time, and she'll sit at the table and have a cup of coffee. But she's like, I've been eating since 2:00. I'm good. You know, so it's not necessarily the end of the world if you don't do that. But
yeah, and see, I'm a once a day eater, and I have been for a long, long time. And I know that that's a big part of why I'm shaped the way I am. But I pretty much do. I eat like once a day.
And I tend to do the same. I tend to have one large meal. At the end of the day, I have my dinner with my husband, which, you know, if anybody ever tries to get a hold of me will understand I do not answer the phone during dinner time or when I'm driving. It's just my thing. But I do tend to eat throughout the day. There's low sodium crackers that I have. My go-to is always the dark chocolate covered almonds, because they're super tasty. They're perfectly balanced. They're low in salt, low in sugar, and they don't taste low in sugar. And
so
they're fantastic.
Dark chocolate covered almonds. And so now, of course, this is Halloween. And the one thing we really didn't talk about, you covered,
Candy.
Yeah, we didn't talk about candy. I mean, other than the dark chocolate covered almonds, is there like any kind of go-to?
Twix.
Really?
Yeah, Twix is my go-to.
Really?
And surprisingly, a lot of candies are lower in sodium, because chocolate in itself is low. It's the additives that you add after. So anything that's got caramel in it, you probably want to avoid.
Because caramel's salted.
Right.
Yeah.
Usually it's salted, and it's literally called salted caramel, or it's made with butter, and butter usually is salted. So you tend to have a little bit higher sodium content in the caramel treats. But most of your chocolate goodies, like the Crunch Bars that everybody covets, all of those things, because they're chocolate, if you look like M&Ms, they're all fairly low. Or the hard candies, same thing. They're not necessarily high. So Halloween has never been one that I really have to avoid, other than the sugar overdose, which, I mean, that's a whole other story.
I mean, yeah, it's a carb loaded holiday.
Right.
It starts the carb loading.
Right.
And yeah, because there's nothing but sugar on Halloween. Sugar.
Well, that's the other one. There was one, not so much sugar related, but it somehow made me think of the recipes and things that you can bring to other places. And a lot of the sugary dishes, you can cut the salt on them fairly easily. So you can bring a dessert or something of that nature. So if at Thanksgiving, if you have smaller portions and then you save up and you're the one that brought an apple pie or something of that nature, you can bring something that has like the French silk pie. So you can still have that treat at the end where you ate a little bit and you tell everybody, I'm saving up for the pie or I'm saving up for the dessert. So you eat less throughout the meal, and then you finish off with something that makes you feel like satisfied and that you didn't, skip all the fun that everybody else had.
Yeah. So, all right, cool. Well, there we have pretty much the episode for low sodium holidays. And we got just about maybe a minute left here. Anything you want to wrap up with? Make sure everybody thinks about or keeps in mind as we're moving into.
My husband, he corrected me. Apparently it wasn't Saturday Night Live. It was Spaceballs.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, I've been corrected by my husband, who, yes, he actually does watch my show. Or I shouldn't say watch my show. He boycotts all social media in any form, shape, or fashion. But he actually does listen to 216 The Net.
That's
so he
awesome.
Can catch our show, yeah.
That's awesome, because you can listen at 216thenet.com.
Yeah.
Or you can just download the app from your favorite app store and listen anytime. So there we have it, folks. Thank you for tuning in again to My LoSo Lifestyle with Mary Shep. We'll be back again next week, Thursday at 11 a.m.
love it.